Today's topic is change management. Areas that we will go through is creating a change order via the web client, and this can be done either in the web client or the DDM office. Automatically adding reference information or templates to your workflow. Automatically creating standard actions, manually creating specific actions, impact assessment, approvals with single or multiple decision makers, and then release and EUM update and watermarks, and then change introduction. So a lot of the things that I've just mentioned there are topics that we've covered on previous workshops. We're just pulling all the different aspects of that together into a business process. Okay, so let me just say, click on this to say this is what we're currently focused on. I'm going to go to DDM Web, and I'm currently logged in as an inspector. If I look here, I'm logged in as Hercule Poirot the Inspector. Okay, couldn't think of any other name. And on the dashboard of DDM Web, we've got an option here that says Create New Folder. Now, this is subject to your access controls. So you can configure DDM so that certain users can only create certain folder types through the web interface. My example, I think I have access to all of them, but it is configurable via the access controls. Create new folder. We're going to use the example of a change order, which is part of the quality management system. Okay. And we want to, let's say, increase the radius of PRT 20377 to 36 millimeters. Okay. Why? Let's say because it's too small. Now, the attributes that I'm filling in here on the folder form are also configurable. The change number is automatic. The request and the reason for requesting are also standard. I've added on my database 3 more fields because I like to track things like, oh, this is a minor design change. We need it as soon as possible because we've got assembly issues, for example. So it might be that you want to add attributes in order to be able to track and run KPIs on business processes in the future. I'm also going to specify that Dave Wright, the technical director, is accountable for this. I don't mind when it started, but maybe I need this completed by the 23rd. So I create the workflow like this. So it's created my change order inside the web client. Now, if I go back into DDM, and I run my search to look at my open change orders, and this is a saved search. What I now see is my change order here to increase the radius of the bearing housing 20377. So, raising it through the web. And although I'm showing you this in the context of a change order, you can create any folder type or action type through the DDM web client. Okay. Let's go back to our workshop here. So creating folders through the web. We have completed this. You can also, if you want to, and I wasn't going to do it this way, in the web client, here in blue, we can see what step of the workflow we are currently at. You click on the arrow, you can transition through the workflow. Now, it's not a graphical workflow in the web client, but it's using exactly the same process. So I could send this for change request approval. I could send it to an engineering manager, pick the user, type in a comment, and transition through the workflow all in the web client. I don't want to do that today, so I'm going to cancel that and go back into DDM Office. The next thing we want to look at is automatically adding reference information to the process as we go through. If we look at the workflow here, if I look at my change order, and I look at the workflow, the standard out-of-the-box change order is first you have the change, or raising the change order. Okay, this is identifying what we want to change. It then has to be approved. Are we going to make the change or not? Now, it might be at this step in the process that you want to send actions to different departments so they have their input before you move on through the process. So it really depends on you as a business as to what's happening at each step. But I've got examples later in the process on introducing changes that I will show you how to do that. Okay, so change request approval. Are we going to make the change or not? You could reject it. You could send the request back to the requester, or we can move forward and make the changes. We can approve the changes, release the changes, and then introduce the changes into the rest of the business, and then close the change order. So for me, this is the bare minimum that you should be looking at if you're doing a change order. And I call it a change order. I don't call it an engineering change order, because the workflow can be used to formally change anything within the business. Okay. So I'm currently at the step called raise change order. I'm going to open this into its own window because I've got some configuration that has been switched on that says as soon as you raise the folder and send it to the workflow, I want to include in the folder our standard work instructions for change orders. So if you've got documentation within your business that is applicable to a process, that can be added automatically. Okay, so the other, I'm just going to hop back here so I can make sure that I'm tracking the topics that we want to cover and go back to my actions. Okay, so adding reference information. The other thing that we can do as part of that is we can also automatically include document templates. So you'll see here that we've got the reference information here, but there are no other documents within my change order. What I want to do at this point in time is I'm going to pin the folder because I'm looking for the part 20377. If I go back to DDM Office and I'm looking for all items, wrong search mode, 20377. The item that I'm looking for is this part. Okay, what I want to do is, and there's the drawing, so straight away I know I need to modify the drawing, and I want to reserve these into my change order. Okay, not showing me for some reason because I probably need to switch this on, and there is my change order being shown because I've pinned it, so I've filtered down this window to only show me pinned items. I'm going to reserve these into the subdivider that's called affected items for change. These are the files that need modification. Okay, so in the main DDM interface, I can see that these two files are now reserved inside this change order. If I go back to my change order now, and I look inside the divider, there is the part and the drawing that are subject to change. I'm now going to send this forward in the workflow for change request approval. You'll also notice that you can put in instructions behind your workflow like this. And I'm going to send this through the workflow. Let me resize my windows. Send this through the workflow, and I'm going to send this request to an engineering manager, just so happens to be me, so I can keep it simple, and then I can type in a comment, hey Stuart, please can you consider this request. So we've sent this forward in the workflow for change request approval. Okay, an email notification will have been sent, and if we now look back at the contents of our folder under reference information, we now have a new document which is our impact assessment notes. So this is a document template. So this is a reference file at the bottom, but this is a new document that has been created as a result of a template. So if you want to put in extended information on your change order. Okay. I'll also highlight here that the workflow has been configured so that as we move forward, it's automatically flagged the files that are going to be changed to under review. So the workflow engine has changed the status. So even though we haven't created a new issue yet, we are telling everybody in the business that this item is currently under review. And also, as part of that, if we look at the PDF of the drawing, we'll see that we've changed the status by the watermarks. Under review, please ask before using. Okay, it's during the period of change that things typically go wrong. So from somebody saying we've got a problem to a new issue of something being released and available, this is the danger time. Okay, so let me close this. Now let's go back to look at our topics to make sure I'm not missing anything, and we go back to our actions. So reference information, so we can add reference documents or new templates automatically. Now I did paste a bit of the information into a window. The way that we do that business logic is via XML. Okay, so I have an example here of how we build this information, and if anybody's interested in these things, we've got lots of examples of different types of XML that allow you to do some of the more advanced things within a workflow. This one's quite simple. We're at the step called raise change order. We're going to do a folder action. We're going to add a reference document. First, we're going to check an attribute. If the attribute change order is at a status of, the folder type change order, the attribute status is active. If that is yes, then I want you to add a template. It's a document. That's the document number, and I want the latest at status of released, and I want it putting in this divider, and then we finish the action. So it's something that you know, it looks like programming, but you can actually read what's happening within it. And there are lots of XML things that we can do within DDM that is a more advanced workflow topic. Okay, but I just wanted to give you an insight on that. So, auto creating standard actions. Again, this is something that we've covered in other topics. If I say in progress. Now, you'll notice here that there is an impact assessment task within our change order folder that was created automatically. So again, that's been defined as part of the default workflow process. If we look at our workflow, let me just minimize this and maximize. You know, when we get the change request approval, for us to agree to make the change or not, we need to do an impact assessment. Okay, we have to understand the implications of what we are doing on the rest of the business. So if I look at the action here that's been automatically created, when we automatically created it, what we also did was added a comment in here as instructions. Check the child-parent relationships, check stock levels, open sales orders, works orders, purchase orders, and any compliance requirements. So this is just a note to the user to say, when you're doing an impact assessment, this is what you should do. We could also put in there, refer to document XYZ, which is the full-blown instructions that we've included as a reference file within the folder. Okay, so what would we do here? If I look at the content of my folder, this is the part that we need to modify. Well, straight away, I can see there is a document that is related to my part, and it has an image in the document, and that will probably need to be changed. So I'm going to reserve the document into my change order as well. So now we're going to modify a Word document a SolidWorks part and a drawing. I'm also going to look at the part because I want to see where the part is used. Now at the moment this part at this version is not used in any parent assembly. You would normally look at all of the parent assemblies and decide of the parent assemblies it might be that only 2 of them need to be updated as part of the change order, so that we're rippling up the chain. It might be the other 8 examples were specials that do not need to be updated. We only want to update the standard products. It's a decision that you make as part of your impact assessment. Okay, so I'm not going to change any parent information. The other thing that we should look at here is, do we have any stock? Okay, I've got a number of attributes that are folder link level attributes. So again, this is something that we might have covered. So what's the stock quantity, stock action, order quantity, order action? If this change order was affecting multiple parts or multiple pieces of information, it might be that you want to know, well, hold on a minute, if I'm modifying this part, how many do we have in stock? And under the standard change management rules for engineering, what are we going to do with that stock if we're going to make this change? So, I've shown this on a previous workshop. If I open the properties for this part, I've configured a new tab in the properties to give me real-time information from my ERP system, and this query will bring back the information. Now, it isn't an ERP system in the background. This is just an example of communicating with a different database to get information via an SQL query, and the ability to put it as a tab. So I don't need to log into ERP, type in the number and go searching around. I can retrieve everything I need in order to make my decision. Okay, so it's just as an example. If we say we currently have 20 in stock, what do we need to do with the stock? Can we use the stock? Do we need to scrap it? Do we need to rework it, etc.? I'm going to say we need to scrap the stock. Do we have any on order? No, and therefore no action. You can also put notes against each item within the folder that are being affected by the change order. So these fields at the end in this window are what we call link level attributes. They are not folder attributes, they are folder relationship attributes between the items in the folder and the folder itself. Very useful in many, many different ways. So again, although we're using this in the context of a change order, this generic functionality within DDM can be used in any folder type, okay, for any number of reasons. Okay, if I'm making the decision to scrap this, what I'm going to do is take the part number of this item. So this is my part number. Let me just copy the part number. Okay, and just before we do this, so we've done our impact assessment, and as part of the impact assessment, I'm creating scrap stock of times 20 off. So I've created a task as an instruction. Sorry, let me just correct that, capital C. I've created a task, and I'm going to assign that task to a different department, the person responsible for stock control, Paul Darton. Hey Paul, please can you action this? So I'm making my decisions, issuing the tasks to be done throughout the business at this point in time. I'm happy that I've done my impact assessment. This has been completed. But before I do that, if I go back to my workflow, I have another rule that's an XML rule, that if I try and move forward, it's telling me that the impact assessment has not been complete, and there's also a field that needs to be populated. Again, these are generic examples of the kind of mechanisms that we've got within DDM. So I need to edit my template. I need to say we need to start this on Friday. Okay, and I have completed my impact assessment, and therefore we can move forward in the workflow. I'm going to assign this to engineering, and I'm going to ask Stuart, hey Stuart, please can you make the changes? And that will then move forward. Okay, so let's go back and look at our subjects. Creating standard actions, we automatically created the impact assessment. Let me set that as complete. We then manually created a specific action to scrap the stock based on the impact assessment that we did. I'm going to set that as complete. This is the impact assessment. So I've explained why we would do an impact assessment, and I'm sure within all of your businesses you're doing these things anyway, but probably doing them in a slightly different way. Okay, just my take on it. Okay, so we're going to make the changes. So I'm going to quickly fire up my SolidWorks. Okay, so I'm going to hop back into DDM, into my change order, because I want to load my bearing housing. I load it into SolidWorks, and I need to modify this radius to 36 millimeters. Okay, and although I'm using SolidWorks as the CAD tool, the process is identical regardless of whichever CAD application you're using. Okay, so we've modified this. I also need to update the related drawing. We have an option within the DDM menu, load the related drawing. Here's my related drawing. SolidWorks has kindly updated that dimension to 36 millimeters. So I now need to save a new issue of my drawing and my part. I'm selecting Save New Issue. We are currently at issue 71. The next issue I'm moving to 72. And the reason I'm changing this is my change order, and these are the new and up-issued items. Okay. So I say OK. This will now save my drawing. It will update the drawing frame from 71 to 72. It will put the change information onto my drawing box at the top there, and we can zoom in on that in a minute. So it's saving the drawing, it's creating a PDF of the drawing. Mine's configured to create a DXF of the drawing as well. We're also saving the model, and we're also creating the neutral file formats for that model as well. So it's not just saving the part and the drawing, it's doing a lot of other work at the same time. It's also audit tracking everything. If we just have a look on the border here, you can see that we've put in the issue 72 information, the date, the change order number, who made the change, and what that, a basic description of what that change was. Okay, so I've made my change to the drawing and saved it away. I want to keep a snapshot of this because I need to update my Word document. So I'm just going to take a snip. Hold on. Of the file like that. Copy. Okay, I can then close this out, go back into DDM and go back to my change order. I then need to load. If I refresh the screen here, what we now see is we've got the old version of the part and the drawing and the new version of the part and the drawing. I'm going to load the document. I'm going to remove the old image and put my new image in. I need to shrink the image like this so it looks correct. I'm going to save my updated document. We'll create a new issue of the document. We're currently at 103. I'm going to go to issue 104. So we're doing exactly the same thing for the document that we did with the CAD part and drawing. The change reason, the destination folder again is the change order, the new and up issued items. It automatically puts in the change order number and the brief description. If I want to, I can put extended information as to why and what I've changed, etc. in there. Not sure what language that is, it doesn't really matter. Okay, and I say okay. So we're saving the document away, and inside our change order now, if I open the right area, What we now have is issue 103 has moved to issue 104. What we need to do next is edit the part. If we go to the part properties, we need to change the links from 103, replace issue with the latest issue of the document. And we don't automatically do that because that might not be correct in every instance. So it is a manual step, but if we made it automatic, I don't believe that would be correct for every business and every instance. Okay, so all of our old data is under review. All of our new data is work in progress. We've completed the impact assessment. We've got our standard work instructions. This task has not been completed yet. Okay, this was sent to Paul Darton in stock control. If I go back to the web and I log out as Hercule Poirot, if I log in as Paul Darton, he will have had an email notification. There's an option here for My Actions. There is the task. So he can then go into the ERP system, update the information, and he can change the status of the task within the web client. All done. If I look back, he has no outstanding actions to do. Okay. In here now, if I look, this task has been completed. So we've made all of our changes. Let me just look back at our list of... Yeah, okay, so we're now ready for the next step. So multiple decision makers in progress. I want to now send this for approval. I go back to my workflow, product document approval. We're going to now send this to the management team. And in this dialog, I've now configured this so that we can have multiple approvers. So not just one. It might be that we need David Wright and we might need, so he's the technical director, the quality manager, Hercule Poirot, and Paul Darton, for example. We can pick 3 different people. I'm going to keep it simple and just pick 2. And I'm going to say, okay, please can you check and approve? So it's step through to that step. If we right click on the workflow, we can see who the decision makers are. No decision has been made. We can also see here that Joe McBurney and John Hershtick are deputies of Hercule Poirot. So if Hercule Poirot is not available, they can deputize and action this for him. Okay, so another nice little feature. Okay, what I need to do is go to the web client. If I go log out here and say I want to log in as David Wright, and it doesn't need to be the web client, you can log into DDM Office and do exactly the same thing. And this is a workflow decision. So I click on workflow decision and there is the decision I need to make. I've got access to view all of the information within here. There's all the information. I can view the drawing. So if I went to the drawing, I could view it and see the PDF of it, etc. If you're happy, we can then send forward and send forward. I'm happy with that, and I'm going to return it to Stuart to say all good. My action has been confirmed, but it will not move forward in the process until the other decision maker has made a decision. Now, you can configure this so that if it gets rejected by a user, it will automatically go back in the workflow as an immediate action. But if it's moving forward as a positive, it needs all of the positives to move forward. So one negative will automatically go back, all positives to move forward. And this is a configurable. Okay, so that was David Wright. Log out. I'm now going to log in as John. Am I going to log in as John Hershtick? No, I'll log in as Joe. Okay. because there's also workflow action for Joe. No, there isn't, because it's a deputy decision. Not a workflow decision, it's a deputy decision. If I'm happy, I send forward and I'm approving this again. I'm going to send this back to Joe and I'm going to say all good. And it knows here that I'm deputizing for Hercule Poirot, and it will keep that in the audit trail. Forward. So now, if I go back to my workflow and refresh, you see there's no green line to allow me to move forward. But if I refresh, it's now gone forward in the workflow because everyone has made the decision. If I look in the audit trail, we see that decision was made, that decision, you know, it's everything that's happened from creating the change order all the way through the process has been tracked. Okay, so back to here, multiple decision makers. We've shown that with the multiple approvals completed. Release and enterprise manager update and watermarks. So again, something that we've covered on a previous workshop is as we push forward in the workflow and we're now going to release the information, we've got it configured within DDM that it will send that information out to a common location for the ERP system to collect the data and bring it in automatically. So connecting the PLM and the ERP systems together. Okay, and then we're going to look at the change introduction tasks. So in order to show this, what I have here is my DDM server. So this is my, this is my DDM server running in the background. Let me get rid of my XML example, like this. Let me stop that for a minute. Okay, so very small screen, but it doesn't really matter. We'll still see what we're looking for. I have a folder called Enterprise Update Manager Output. When we release the workflow, the XML information about the new part, the new drawing, and the new documents will all be delivered to this location. So this is release request. If I just check the content, you see that the affected items have been automatically changed their status to checked and approved because we checked and approved it. Back to the workflow, change introduction. I've configured it to send it to a management team. I'm going to keep overall control of my change order. And I've put an option at this step in the workflow to prompt for the user's password. If you're subject to compliance regulations like FDA, then you have the ability to prompt for the user's password at any step of the process to guarantee that it was that user and not someone's machine was left logged in. So all of these mechanisms have been added for reasons. If I need to put the password. Okay, so if I say okay to this, I'm stepping forward in the process and multiple things have happened now. Let's look at the first one, which is releasing the data. We now see that our new part, drawing and document have been released, and also our impact assessment document has been released. The old information has been flagged as superseded. And if we look at the server, what will appear on the server is the XML information about that updated files so that the ERP system can be electronically updated. There you go. So if we just look at the example of the part and we open the XML file, the part information is now issue 72. That can be updated in the ERP system. We also include information in here which tells us the folder that was EUM sent by this user as part of this process. So we include information about the user and information about the folder that the item was released in. So you can transfer that information as well. When the receiving system gets the information it needs, it deletes what it doesn't want. So let's minimize this, go back to our list of tasks, release and enterprise update manager and watermarks. Let's go back and look at the watermarks, because our drawing now, the new drawing, has now been released, and we can see here the text-based watermark says released for use. This text can be whatever you want it to be because it's configurable. I've also configured my drawing frame to take the person who checked it and the person that released it as a watermark as well. And the reason I do that is I don't need to reload a drawing to apply that information. It's applied automatically as a watermark. Okay. I'm going to close my drawing. Let's go back to our tasks. So we've looked at releasing, enterprise update manager and watermarks, and the final thing is change introduction. Now at the beginning I mentioned that when you're doing the change request approval, some businesses have to have the input from different departments before the change is made, and therefore when you get to the introduce change, you're not catching anybody out by surprise. If you make a change and you've not asked for somebody's input before you change it, they might say, I have an issue with you changing this. So normally you would have those things at the beginning of the process and the end, but it's entirely up to you. When I've arrived at my change introduction step of the process, if I look at my content here, we've created an automatic action for the marketing, sales, engineering, purchase, production and service departments, that those tasks are automatically assigned to those departments, so they have to acknowledge that they're aware of this change in order to update information in their area of the business. Okay, if I try and close the change order, it will prevent me from closing because these things have not been completed. You could put a timer on this step, keep trying. So every half an hour it will try and close this, and therefore as people acknowledge their change introduction task and close them off, the workflow can automatically close on its own at that point in time. And again, these are all just configuration type options that you have. In the case of today's focus workshop, that's all about a change order, but the kind of rules that I'm applying could be for any kind of business process. Okay, let me just quickly go back. I'm going to close my change order, and that has been completed. So just to recap on what I've been through is we've raised a change order through the web client, can also be done in the DDM Office client. We've given an example of adding existing reference information or adding a template document. We've automatically created some standard actions within the process and shown an example of manually creating a specific action, which was the scrapping of the 20 off bearing housings. We've talked about the impact assessment and the importance of doing an impact assessment. We then demonstrated the ability to have approvals with multiple decision makers. And then when we release something, we can automatically update other databases within the business, and we can update the watermarks that apply to our new data, and then the change introduction at the end of the change order.